In the quiet dawn of a hidden leaf village, just beginning to heal from years of war and loss, a new possibility was being written into the life of Naruto Uzumaki, one different from the path we know. For in this version of events, his journey begins with something strange awakening deep inside him, something ancient and heavy with destiny. It did not start with fanfare or spectacle, but rather a soft, humming pulse that stirred in his dreams. When he was young, Naruto had always felt different, not just for the 9 tails sealed within him, but for the strange visions that would come to him in moments of silence. Flashes of eyes, not his own, circles within circles, rippling with quiet power. The Rinnegan. At first, it was subtle, more a sensation than a power. He could sense people's emotions, feel chakra in the air, like a shift in the wind. His pranks became more precise, his instincts sharper, as if he could see half a second into the future. As Naruto trained at the academy, the Rinnegan remained dormant in appearance, but not in function. His reflexes were uncanny, his endurance unnatural. Iruka noticed it. So did the 3rd Hokage, who quietly informed Jiraiya. The old sage, curious and concerned, began to keep a watchful eye on the boy. Not just for the 9 tails, but for what else he might be carrying. Naruto's early childhood remained mostly the same, lonely, full of loud declarations of his dream to become Hokage, shadowed by the cold stares of villagers. But within, there was a presence growing, waiting for its moment. It came the night Mizuki tricked him into stealing the scroll of sealing. When he was cornered, hurt, and desperate, the Rinnegan bloomed. In a flash of light and spiraling pain, Naruto's blue eyes became an otherworldly ripple of purple. For a moment, time seemed to slow. His breath caught. The forest around him shimmered with chakra lines. He could see the network inside Iruka, the darkness in Mizuki's heart. And then, instinctively, he moved, not with strength alone, but with space itself. He blinked and was behind Mizuki, a whisper of motion, and Mizuki was unconscious, not from the shadow, clone, jutsu, but from a strange technique his body seemed to know. Shinra Tensei. Iruka, shaken and awestruck, reported everything. The 3rd Hokage stood quietly in the Hokage's office, staring out the window for a long time before whispering, "So it begins again." The Rinnegan was known to them, the sage of 6 paths, the cycle of peace and pain. But this time, it had chosen someone unexpected. Jiraiya returned to the village early, his eyes heavier than usual. He approached Naruto not as a stranger, but as someone destined to walk beside him. Naruto's training shifted after that. While he still struggled with basic jutsu at times, his Rinnegan gave him abilities no one else at the academy could dream of. He could sense attacks before they came. He could push and pull objects without touching them. He didn't understand it yet, not really, But the power responded to emotion, to clarity, to purpose. Jiraiya began visiting him regularly, sometimes in secret, guiding him with stories and quiet wisdom. He told Naruto about Nagato, a boy from the past who had also inherited those eyes, a boy whose pain had changed him. "Don't let pain define you," Jiraiya told Naruto. "Let it shape you, but not consume you." When Team 7 was formed, Kakashi noticed the change immediately. Naruto was still loud, still impulsive, but there was something behind his gaze now. Depth, as if he saw more than he let on. During the bell test, he didn't just rush forward. He watched. He planned. He saw every thread of chakra Kakashi used and adapted. He still failed, of course, as they all did. But Kakashi took note. And when Naruto asked about the Rinnegan, Kakashi remained silent for a long time before saying, "Power like that has history. You'll need to write your own." Their missions began. Naruto learned the value of teamwork, the weight of protecting others. And all the while, the Rinnegan was growing stronger. He could now feel chakra, even in animals, track movements with eerie precision. During a bandit ambush on a C-rank mission, he pushed back 5 attackers without touching them. Sasuke stared, caught between admiration and unease. Sakura whispered, "How did you do that?" And Naruto simply shrugged. "I don't know. I just felt it." The Chunin exams arrived like a storm. Forest of death. Written tests. The tower in the center. Orochimaru's shadow loomed. And in that twisted encounter, the Rinnegan flared once more. The serpent man hissed in delight. "You're not like the others," he said, slithering close. "You are something else. Something ancient." Naruto responded with a shockwave that shattered trees and threw Orochimaru back, just enough for the team to escape. But it left Naruto drained, trembling. "That wasn't me," he whispered. "It was something inside." Gaara's arrival added another mirror to Naruto's reflection. A Jinchuriki like himself, haunted, angry, alone. But where Gaara chose hatred, Naruto leaned toward connection. The Rinnegan responded to this. It showed him not just power, but insight. He began to see Gaara not as a monster, but as a boy, breaking under weight no child should carry. In their eventual clash, the Rinnegan did not flare with violence. It flared with compassion. Naruto spoke instead of fought. And it made Gaara pause, just for a moment. And that moment was enough. The village began to notice, not just Naruto's strength, but his presence. He wasn't the dead last anymore. He wasn't just the Nine-Tails host. He was something more, something older. Some called it luck. Others feared it. But the elders watched in silence, whispering about prophecy, about fate, about the balance being disturbed. And somewhere far away, in the shadows of rain and sorrow, a man with orange hair and 6 bodies stirred. The Rinnegan had awakened once more, and it did not belong to him alone. anymore. And so, Naruto's journey was no longer just about acknowledgement. It was about legacy, power, burden. What would he do with eyes that had rewritten the world before? Could he walk a different path? Could he remain himself? In the stillness of the night, Naruto sometimes stared at the moon and wondered if the Rinnegan was a blessing or a warning. The days after the Chunin exams were quieter, but no less significant. Though Naruto did not realize it, the shifting winds of fate had already begun to stir more fiercely around him. The village had taken note, not just of his victories, but of the way his presence affected those around him. Where others saw a boy growing into strength, the older generation, the ones who remembered the great wars and the legends of old, saw something much more unsettling. A pair of rippled, violet eyes had not appeared in the world since Nagato, the child who had turned pain into power and peace into punishment. And now they shone again in the eyes of Konoha's most unpredictable child. But Naruto remained unaware of how many eyes watched him, how many threads had begun to wrap themselves around his destiny. He still moved with his usual energy, laughed loudly, and trained harder than anyone else. But in his dreams, the whispers grew louder. The moon seemed closer. He often saw figures standing in the distance, with their backs turned, as if waiting for him to catch up. And each time he took a step forward, they faded, just out of reach. These dreams were not memories. They were echoes of a path not yet taken, of choices not yet made. After the events of the Forest of Death and the confrontation with Orochimaru, the village began reinforcing security. But the real tension rippled beneath the surface. The invasion of the hidden sand and sound was approaching, though few knew it yet. Naruto and his team continued to train, unaware that the Chunin exams were but a curtain for the chaos that would soon descend upon Konoha. Sasuke, ever watchful, had grown quieter around Naruto. Something in him had shifted. Not only had Naruto begun to catch up in power, he had begun to surpass him in strange, otherworldly ways. Sasuke didn't understand the Rinnegan, but he felt the weight it carried. Jealousy stirred within him, but so did curiosity. He began pushing himself harder, becoming more distant. The bond between them, once clumsy but real, began to fray under the silent pressure of comparison. Then came the third phase of the exams. Naruto's fight with Neji Hyuga became a turning point, not just for the audience watching, but for Naruto himself. Neji's belief in fate, in the unchangeable chains of destiny, was like a stone pressing against Naruto's heart. But Naruto, with the Rinnegan shimmering faintly beneath the surface of his irises, stood as a contradiction to everything Neji believed. He defied fate, not with arrogance, but with hope. Their clash was fierce. Neji's precision against Naruto's unpredictability. But what gave Naruto the edge was something neither of them truly understood: the ability to see chakra pathways with uncanny clarity, to sense the precise moment of intention before it became motion. His Rinnegan, though not fully awakened, pulsed with potential. And when Neji struck toward his heart, Naruto disappeared, blinked, and reappeared behind him, as if space itself had bent for him. A technique born from instinct rather than training. It wasn't just about defeating Neji. It was about showing him that the cage he believed he lived in didn't have to define him, that no destiny was unchangeable. The match ended. Naruto victorious. But the whispers only grew louder. Then came the invasion. As the sand and sound launched their assault on Konoha, the village fell into chaos. The sky darkened with summoned beasts, and screams echoed in the streets. Naruto, still recovering from his fight, was thrown into battle once again. When the giant snake tore through the outer walls, when the sand turned against them, Naruto moved not with panic, but with strange clarity. His Rinnegan awakened fully in that moment. The violet rings glowed as if lit from within, and the battlefield shifted around him. He could sense every movement. He could repel attacks with a thought. He saved a group of academy students by pushing an entire wall of debris away with a wave of his hand. When he and Shikamaru were sent after Sasuke, who had gone chasing Gaara, Naruto's steps grew heavier. Something felt wrong. He could feel the tension in the air, the way chakra trembled ahead of them. He knew Sasuke was in danger. When they arrived, the battle had already begun. Sasuke, wounded and desperate, faced Gaara's monstrous transformation. The one tail loomed above them, wild and violent. Naruto stepped forward, and his eyes changed again. This time, not only did he see chakra, he felt its emotion, its intent. The pain in Gaara's heart was suffocating. The loneliness, the hatred, the desperate need to be acknowledged. And Naruto, still only a boy, stood firm. "I know what that's like," he said. "I know what it feels like to be alone." But words alone weren't enough. The beast attacked, and Naruto responded, not with rage, but with resolve. He summoned 1,000 shadow clones, and when they fell, he used Shinra Tensei to push back the crushing weight of Gaara's power. He didn't want to destroy him. He wanted to reach him. And when he finally landed the blow that brought Gaara to the ground, it wasn't with fury. It was with understanding. The fight ended not with victory, but with connection. A silent promise between two boys who had suffered the same wound. After the invasion was repelled, the village mourned the loss of the third Hokage. The funeral was quiet, the pain palpable. Naruto stood among the crowd, eyes wide, heart heavy. He had saved people. He had protected his home. But he couldn't protect everyone. It was the first time the weight of power truly settled on his shoulders. The Rinnegan had given him strength, yes, but it had not made him invincible. It had only made him more aware of what he stood to lose. Jiraiya took Naruto with him soon after, beginning their journey to find Tsunade. But as they left the village, Jiraiya turned to look at the boy beside him. Not just the host of the Nine Tails, but the bearer of a power that had shaped the fate of the world before. And in a land far away, cloaked in rain and sorrow, the eyes of another Rinnegan user narrowed. The path was beginning to narrow. The branches of destiny were bending toward one another, and Naruto was walking into the storm. The road away from the hidden leaf village stretched endlessly, winding through forests and rivers as Naruto and Jiraiya traveled together. The quiet crunch of their footsteps blending into the rhythm of the wild. It was the first time Naruto had truly left home without the rest of his team. The first time he had the world at his feet, with no clear end in sight. He found it exhilarating. Each new town a different flavor, each new face a story waiting to be discovered. But he also carried the growing weight of something heavier than mere curiosity. The Rinnegan. Jiraiya didn't speak of it often, but Naruto could tell that the old man was thinking about it constantly. He would glance at Naruto when he thought the boy wasn't looking, his eyes narrowing slightly in thought, as if trying to unravel a puzzle older than both of them. Naruto had tried asking once, "Ero Sennin, what do you know about the Rinnegan?" But Jiraiya had only given him a serious look and said, "It's not something to take lightly. You're strong, but strength like that always draws the eyes of others, dangerous ones." Naruto had dropped the subject after that, but the words stayed with him. Even in towns where they stayed only a few nights, he'd catch whispers. An odd-eyed boy, strange chakra, something otherworldly about the way he moved. He couldn't hide it anymore. Sometimes, the Rinnegan would activate on its own when he was scared, or angry, or too focused. It wasn't like the Nine Tails chakra. It didn't burn or rage. It simply was. Cold, calm, and vast. Their mission was to find Tsunade, the woman Jiraiya hoped would become the next Hokage. But for Naruto, the trip was more than a mission. It was a chance to learn. And Jiraiya, despite his constant flirtations and questionable behavior, took training seriously when it mattered. Days were spent honing chakra control, pushing Naruto's already massive reserves further. Jiraiya pushed him toward shadow clone efficiency, toward better taijutsu, and most importantly, toward understanding the Rinnegan's dormant powers. They experimented carefully. Jiraiya didn't want Naruto accessing techniques that could collapse buildings or tear apart landscapes without knowing how to rein them in. So they started with observation. Naruto was taught to meditate with his eyes open, to focus not just on what he saw, but how he saw it. And slowly, the boy began to notice things. How chakra moved not just through people, but through nature itself. He saw the delicate threads that tied individuals together, the emotional impressions left behind like footprints in the sand. They arrived in Tanzaku town after weeks of travel, the city bustling with activity and games and noise that seemed almost too cheerful for a country still recovering from war. It was here that they finally found Tsunade, She was exactly as Jiraiya had described, proud, strong, and carrying a weight in her eyes that mirrored Naruto's own in moments of stillness. But she didn't take kindly to Jiraiya's request, and even less so to the idea of some kid tagging along, trying to be Hokage. Naruto didn't back down. He stood before her, fists clenched, voice shaking, but strong. "I don't care what you think. I'm going to be Hokage one day. You'll see." Tsunade had scoffed at him, but beneath her annoyance, something in his eyes had caught her attention. Not just the stubbornness, but the strange ripple of power behind them. She couldn't ignore it. She didn't say anything, but she felt it. A disturbance in the path she'd long abandoned. Then Orochimaru arrived. His presence was like a sickness in the air. The tension doubled as he made his offer. He wanted Tsunade to heal his arms, promising her anything, playing on old wounds and forgotten pain. Naruto didn't know the full story, but he didn't need to. He saw how Tsunade trembled after Orochimaru left. He heard the way her voice cracked when she spoke of loss, of death, of dreams buried under the weight of failure. And when she tested Naruto, challenging his resolve, he didn't waver. Even as she mocked him, he trained harder. He practiced the Rasengan Jiraiya had begun teaching him, despite the bruises, the failures, the nights he collapsed in frustration. He didn't care if it took days or months. He was going to learn it, because he had to be strong enough to protect people. The Rinnegan had given him power, but it hadn't taught him how to use it. That came from will, from effort. And when Tsunade saw the way he refused to give up, something in her heart shifted. The confrontation came soon after. Orochimaru, furious at her hesitation, tried to force her hand. Kabuto, always at his master's side, moved like a snake through shadow. But Naruto stepped into the fight without hesitation. And though his Rasengan wasn't perfect, it struck with enough force to leave Kabuto stunned and broken. It wasn't just a technique. It was a statement that he wouldn't let anyone take what he cared about, that no one, not even a Sanin, could shake his resolve. The Rinnegan flared once during the fight, pushing Orochimaru's attacks away with invisible force. Jiraiya had noticed it, and so had Tsunade. But they said nothing. Not yet. After the battle, after Orochimaru slithered away in defeat, and Tsunade accepted the role of Hokage, Naruto stood at the edge of town and looked at the sky. He felt older, not in age, but in spirit, like he'd taken a step deeper into a world far larger than he'd imagined. And as they made their way back to the hidden leaf, he began to understand something simple but profound. Being strong wasn't enough. You had to be strong for something. And he was strong for his friends, for his village, for the promise he made to himself under the Hokage monument when he was still just a lonely kid looking for acknowledgement. The Rinnegan pulsed softly in his eyes, a silent agreement between power and purpose, and the road ahead stretched on, returning to the hidden leaf. After the journey with Jiraiya and Tsunade, Naruto felt a shift, not only in the village, but within himself. The streets he once ran through as an unnoticed child now greeted him with cautious eyes, some recognizing the new glint in his gaze. Others couldn't name it, but they sensed something had changed. It wasn't just the way he carried himself, or the presence of Tsunade walking beside him. It was the faint ripple of power that accompanied him like a silent storm just beyond the horizon. Tsunade became the 5th Hokage, and life in the village settled into its new rhythm. Naruto resumed missions with Team 7, but the days of simple training and awkward teamwork were growing shorter. Sasuke had become more withdrawn, not outright hostile, but sharper in his silence. His gaze often lingered on Naruto, on the way their strength now felt equal, or worse, tilted. Naruto noticed. He didn't speak on it, but the Rinnegan seemed to know when tension stirred near him, and more than once, it responded when Naruto wasn't trying to call it forth. Kakashi noticed too. During spars, Naruto would move in ways he hadn't learned. Subtle but strange shifts in timing, awareness of danger just before it came. Sometimes, it felt like he could see everything. The angle of a kunai before it flew. The chakra buildup before a jutsu was formed. Kakashi said nothing outright, but the glances he shared with Jiraiya during brief meetings were laced with concern. And Naruto trained harder than ever. He didn't want to rely on the Rinnegan. He wanted to earn his strength. Mastering the Rasengan became an obsession. While the Rinnegan offered strange new paths, gravity-based techniques, sensing life energy across great distances, potential abilities, Jiraiya warned were once associated with destruction. Naruto kept returning to what made him who he was. Grit, repetition, persistence. Sasuke, meanwhile, was spiraling. The arrival of the Sound Four shattered what little peace remained. Orochimaru's shadows reached far, and his offer of power found Sasuke at his weakest. When the Uchiha left the village under cover of night, Naruto didn't hesitate. He joined the mission to retrieve him with a determination that burned hotter than any jutsu. The journey after Sasuke was brutal. Fights that tested each member of the retrieval squad left them bloodied and broken. Naruto fought through it all, the Rinnegan awakening in defense of his comrades. Against Kimimaro, he unleashed a wave of chakra so forceful it shook the forest and sent shockwaves through the enemy's stance. It wasn't refined. He still couldn't control it fully, but it was enough. And then came the Valley of the End. Naruto found Sasuke standing atop the great statues of Hashirama and Madara, the two founders whose legacies shaped their world. It felt symbolic in ways Naruto couldn't articulate. Two boys born of loss, raised in the aftermath of giants, standing at the edge of a river that would either bind them or divide them forever. Their battle was ferocious. Sasuke, empowered by the curse mark, fought with vengeance and desperation. Naruto, torn between friendship and duty, unleashed everything he had. The Rinnegan responded again, subconsciously at first. His chakra absorbed Sasuke's attacks. His vision sharpened to every move, and at one point, he forced the river to part around them with a gravity pulse that sent water flying in two great walls. Sasuke noticed. "What are you?" he shouted, blood dripping from his mouth, eyes wide with something between awe and fear. Naruto didn't have an answer. The final clash came as Rasengan met Chidori. In that suspended moment, time felt slower. The river screamed beneath them, stone cracked, the sky lit with chakra. When the dust settled, Sasuke stood barely conscious, victorious in form, but shaken. Naruto lay unconscious, the Rinnegan fading from his eyes. Sasuke stared at him for a long time, as if waiting for something. An answer, perhaps. But there was only silence. And then he turned, leaving the village behind once more. Naruto awoke in the hospital, aching in every bone. Tsunade stood by his side, her expression unreadable. "You used it again," she said quietly. "The Rinnegan." He nodded, slowly. "I didn't mean to. It just came out." Tsunade sighed, placing a hand on his forehead. "It's like holding a sword too heavy for the wielder. You're strong, Naruto. But this eye, it wasn't meant for peace. It was a tool used by men who reshaped the world through war." "I'm not them," Naruto said, barely above a whisper. "No," she agreed. "You're not." He trained harder after that. Not to chase Sasuke, not to master the Rinnegan, but to be ready. Ready for whatever the world had in store. Missions came and went. Enemies grew stronger. The Akatsuki began moving in the shadows, hunting tailed beasts, speaking of a greater plan. And through it all, Naruto grew, not just as a shinobi, but as a person. He laughed with his friends, helped the villagers repair homes, studied more seriously under Jiraiya, learning about sealing techniques and sage lore. The Rinnegan, still mysterious, became a part of him, less a power to fear, more a tool he would one day master. But the world was changing, and somewhere far away, other eyes began to take notice. The years that followed blurred into a long winter of training, battles, and the quiet search for purpose. Naruto grew taller, stronger, and more thoughtful. His presence began to carry a weight that others could feel. He was no longer just the loudmouth prankster, or the boy who dreamed of becoming Hokage. There was something deeper now, not just power, but clarity, resolve. The Rinnegan didn't speak to him with words, but its influence was undeniable. He felt connected to the world in ways he couldn't explain. Every step he took through the village streets or forests beyond seemed laced with echoes of distant lives and unseen forces. When news of Gaara's kidnapping by the Akatsuki reached the Leaf, Naruto didn't hesitate. He joined the rescue team immediately, traveling with Kakashi, Sakura, and Chiyo across deserts and canyons to the hidden sand. There was a gnawing in his chest, something ancient and protective, as if the Rinnegan itself recoiled at the thought of another Jinchuriki falling prey to those who would steal their humanity. The battle at the Akatsuki hideout tested everything. Deidara and Sasori were unlike any enemies Naruto had faced. Sasori's emotionless puppets clashed with Sakura's raw strength and Chiyo's wisdom, while Deidara taunted Naruto with every detonation, every disappearing clay bird that spiraled through the sky. But it was when Gaara's lifeless body was found that Naruto's power surged beyond his control. His anger, grief, and determination coalesced into a wave of chakra that sent cracks spiraling through the cavern walls. His Rinnegan bloomed to life once more, fully, clearly, and for a fleeting second, the world around him shifted. He could see the threads of chakra in every direction. He could feel every heartbeat in the room. Kakashi had to step in. He placed a hand on Naruto's shoulder and said softly, "This isn't your burden alone." And just like that, Naruto pulled back. The moment passed, but the feeling lingered. They brought Gaara back through Chiyo's sacrifice, and Naruto stood over his friend with tears in his eyes, understanding, perhaps more than anyone else, the pain of loneliness and the fragile bond that had saved them both. Back in the leaf, the weight of Akatsuki's ambitions only grew heavier. News of other Jinchuriki being captured made the air around the village feel tense. Meetings with the elders grew more frequent. Jiraiya spoke in hushed tones about something darker behind the Akatsuki. A name, a hidden puppeteer. And in the quiet hours of the night, Naruto began to dream of strange landscapes, ruined cities suspended in time, swirling chakra storms, and a looming moon that watched him with unblinking judgment. In one dream, he saw a figure standing before him, a man with long white hair, a rippling cloak, and eyes like his own. "You will have to choose," the figure said. "Not just who to fight, but what to become." Naruto would awaken sweating, heart pounding. But he didn't tell anyone. He didn't know how to explain that the dreams felt real. Not like memories, but like echoes from another timeline. Meanwhile, his training with Kakashi and Yamato intensified. With Kakashi's guidance and Yamato's control over the Nine Tails chakra, Naruto pushed himself to new heights. He began incorporating the Rinnegan's abilities more intentionally now, amplifying his awareness in battle, redirecting enemy jutsu, and learning to absorb chakra when overwhelmed. He discovered he could repel entire squads of attackers with a pulse of force, or detect movements from miles away when he closed his eyes and listened to the flow of energy. But these gifts came at a cost. He found himself drifting from others, not by choice, but by instinct. The more he trained, the more he felt different. Even Sakura began to sense it. "You're not the same," she said one afternoon during a break. You're still Naruto. But sometimes it's like you're not really here." He forced a smile and waved it off, but her words stuck with him. And then came Jiraiya's final mission. The news came like a thunderclap. Jiraiya was going to the Hidden Rain to uncover the Akatsuki leader. He said it with his usual humor, masking concern behind smirks and casual remarks. Naruto begged to come. Jiraiya refused. "This path is mine," he said, with a hand on Naruto's head. "You still have your own road to walk?" Naruto watched him leave with a knot in his chest. That night, the dreams returned. This time, they were not symbolic. They were clear. Jiraiya, fighting alone, surrounded by figures with glowing eyes, rain falling like daggers, pain. He woke, screaming. Days passed. Then a message arrived. Jiraiya had fallen. The village mourned. Tsunade crumbled. And Naruto stood alone beneath the Hokage monument, eyes blank, heart heavy. He felt powerless for the first time in years. The Rinnegan offered no comfort. It pulsed behind his eyelids like a second heartbeat, reminding him of everything he couldn't stop. But grief sharpened his purpose. He would finish what Jiraiya started. He would find the truth. He would end the cycle. And deep within the forest, beneath the falling leaves, Naruto began a new kind of training. Sage mode. Not just strength, not just vision, but balance, wisdom, connection. Because he understood now, having the Rinnegan wasn't the answer. The power alone wouldn't save anyone. It was the heart behind it, the person who bore its weight, that made the difference. And Naruto was ready to carry it. The wind whispered through the trees of Mount Myoboku, carrying with it the quiet hum of nature's patience. Naruto sat motionless, cross-legged atop a stone pedestal, his body still, his breath deep. Around him, the great toads watched silently. Fukasaku and Shima stood guard like sentinels of ancient wisdom, their weathered eyes tracking the tremble of the world around them. Sage mode was a communion, not just a technique. It required stillness, harmony, presence. It was a challenge Naruto had never faced, one of restraint rather than motion. Time moved differently on the mountain. Hours felt like days, days like weeks. He could feel the world's energy now, pulsing gently through the moss, the wind, the ripple of water over stone. The Rinnegan responded strangely in this environment, more awake, more aware. For the first time, the two forces in Naruto's life didn't clash. The sage energy and the Rinnegan did not compete. They coexisted, weaving together like twin threads of destiny. One born of nature, the other of gods. Naruto had never felt more whole. But peace was fleeting. A message came. The hidden leaf had been attacked. The village was gone. Naruto stood on the precipice of Mount Myoboku, the scroll in his hand trembling. pain had come. Not just metaphorically, but literally. The leader of the Akatsuki had descended on Konoha and turned it to rubble. The people he loved were scattered. Lives were lost, buildings flattened. Even Kakashi had been caught in the destruction. There was no time for despair. There was only the journey forward. He returned not on foot, but with the help of the toads. Summoning himself to the outskirts of the ruined village, he landed in the debris with a thud, wind swirling around his cloak. The air was thick with dust and silence. Bodies were being pulled from rubble. Survivors looked up with hollow eyes. But when they saw him, Naruto, their comrade, their light, a spark returned to their gaze. He walked slowly through the wreckage. His eyes scanned what had once been his home. In his heart, something burned. Not vengeance, not rage, but conviction. He reached the center of the destruction and stood tall. And then pain came. The sky rippled as the 6 paths of pain descended like fallen gods, their eyes mirrors of Naruto's own. The Rinnegan, cold, unforgiving, merciless. But Naruto did not flinch. The battle that followed would be remembered in whispers for generations. It was a clash, not just of techniques, but of ideologies, of losses carried and burdens accepted. Pain unleashed everything. Summons, devastation, chakra rods like black rain. But Naruto, now a master of sage mode, moved with new grace. Every punch carried the force of mountains. Every movement was in rhythm with the world around him. He fought alone, not out of pride, but out of necessity. One by one, he dismantled the paths of pain. The chameleon fell beneath a Rasen shuriken, enhanced with nature energy. The Preta path was overwhelmed by the sheer volume of energy it tried to absorb. The Deva path, Yahiko's hollow shell, faced Naruto at the end, high above the trees, where silence ruled. They clashed in a final burst that shook the sky, and when it ended, Naruto stood breathless, battered, but not broken. But something lingered, a thread yet uncut. Through the stillness, Naruto sensed a presence. His Rinnegan guided him to it, a forest beyond the edge of the village, where an emaciated man sat hidden within a mechanical tree of chakra rods. Nagato. He was not what Naruto expected. Not a monster, not a tyrant, but a man, sick, scarred, tired. And there, beneath the shade of the trees, words passed between them like autumn leaves drifting through time. Naruto spoke not with anger, but with empathy, of Jiraiya, of pain, of loss, of choice. Nagato listened, his breath labored. He looked into Naruto's Rinnegan and saw something impossible, not inherited power, but earned hope. And in the end, Nagato made his final choice. he gave his life to return the lives he'd taken. When Naruto emerged from the forest, dawn was breaking over the ruins of the village. Survivors blinked through the golden haze as friends returned to life before their eyes. The boy with the Rinnegan, the boy who was once scorned, had become something more. He had become a symbol. The days that followed were filled with rebuilding, both of stone and spirit. Tsunade awoke from her coma. Kakashi returned, tired but alive. And Naruto found himself at the center of a quiet reverence. People smiled at him with gratitude. Children whispered his name like a song. But he didn't let it change him, because he knew the story wasn't over. He trained harder than ever before. The Rinnegan still had secrets he had yet to master, abilities he had only glimpsed. Teleportation, life and death, control over gravity itself. But he also remembered what Jiraiya once said: a hero's power isn't in what he can destroy, it's in what he can protect. As he walked the recovering streets of Konoha, Naruto made a vow not to be consumed by the power he carried, not to forget the people who loved him, not to abandon the boy he used to be. But far beyond the borders of the Land of Fire, darker currents began to stir. Madara's name was whispered in the shadows. The moon watched with silent intent, and Naruto could feel it. A storm was coming, but he would face it. With eyes wide open, time, like the tide, moved forward gently, but without mercy. The hidden leaf slowly rose from the ashes, its people guided by hope and resilience. Naruto had become the village's quiet center, not just a symbol of strength, but a reminder that even in the face of overwhelming pain, compassion could shape the world. And yet, the presence of the Rinnegan in his eyes set him apart, not in status, but in burden. He had accepted this power not for conquest, but for protection, and the weight of it followed him with every step. In the months that followed Pain's defeat, Naruto continued his training, diving deeper into the mysteries of the Rinnegan. He learned to manipulate gravity with precision, pulling and pushing enemies with mere thoughts. He discovered how to summon the King of Hell and communicate with souls long gone. The power to read minds, extract truth, restore life. These were not just tools, they were sacred responsibilities. But he didn't chase mastery for pride. He did so because he knew darkness still lingered on the edge of the world. And then came whispers of a masked man who wore the Sharingan and called himself Madara, of Akatsuki remnants gathering strength, of a plan so bold it threatened to plunge the world into eternal illusion. The Moon's Eye Plan, a vision of forced peace through absolute control. It was everything Naruto stood against. The Five Kage summoned a summit to unite the shinobi nations. Naruto, now recognized as a force beyond his years, was invited to speak. His words weren't grand or poetic. They were simple, honest, heartfelt. He spoke of his pain, his path, and his desire to protect every village. not just his own. For the first time in history, the leaders of the great nations looked upon a Jinchuriki not with suspicion, but with respect. But Madara, or rather the man claiming his name, would not wait. The fourth great ninja war was declared. The enemy sought to capture the tailed beasts and bring the infinite Tsukuyomi to life. Naruto, with Kurama's full cooperation and the eyes of the Sage of Six Paths, stood at the center of the resistance. The allied shinobi forces rallied not behind titles, but behind a boy who had once been alone and had chosen love over hatred. The battlefield stretched across mountains and rivers, forests and canyons. The air was thick with chakra and war cries. Naruto moved through it all like a storm given form. Shadow clones raced in every direction, helping wounded, intercepting enemies, lifting spirits. He fought alongside Gaara, Kakashi, Bee, and thousands of shinobi who had once looked down on him. And in every clash, every movement, he fought not to win, but to protect. The enemy unveiled their trump card, reanimation. From the graves of history rose the greatest shinobi the world had ever known. Among them, Madara Uchiha in the flesh, a ghost turned god. His power eclipsed anything they'd faced before. The sky tore open under his might. Entire units fell. Hope wavered. But Naruto would not yield. He faced Madara head-on, Sage mode blazing, Kurama roaring within, and the Rinnegan glowing like twin suns. Their battle cracked the earth, shook the oceans. Madara, curious at first, was slowly pushed to the edge, not just by Naruto's strength, but by his will. This wasn't the child he had dismissed. This was someone who carried generations within him. Someone who loved the world Madara wanted to control. Then came the twist, the Black Zetsu's betrayal, the rise of Kaguya, the mother of all chakra. Time bent, dimensions shattered. And yet, Naruto never lost himself. Alongside Sasuke, Sakura, and Kakashi, he navigated the impossible, not through brute force, but through trust. Each step was a reflection of bonds forged over years, of trials that had shaped him into someone worthy of the eyes he bore. In the final moments, after Kaguya had been sealed, and the world returned to normalcy, Naruto and Sasuke faced one another one last time, not as enemies, not as heroes, but as brothers walking different paths toward the same light. Their battle at the Valley of the End was less about victory and more about understanding. The Rinnegan, now matured and integrated within Naruto's soul, showed him Sasuke's pain. And through that vision, he reached out, not with a fist, but with empathy. They both fell, arms outstretched, hands clasped, the world quiet once more. When Naruto awoke, the sun was rising. Birds called softly through the trees. The war was over. The future was his to shape. Years passed. Peace took root. Villages rebuilt not as fortresses, but as homes. Technology slowly bloomed, bridges connecting cultures. Naruto walked those bridges often, his Rinnegan hidden now beneath calm eyes, his presence steady, gentle. He became the seventh Hokage, not through ambition, but through love. Children laughed as he passed. Elders smiled knowingly. The boy who once couldn't control his own chakra had become the guardian of the world. Kurama, ever watchful within, had changed too. No longer a beast of hate, but a partner, a friend. The Rinnegan, once seen as a curse of power, had become Naruto's reminder, a symbol not of what he could do, but of why he chose to do it. And sometimes, in quiet moments between missions, when the wind stirred the leaves just so, Naruto would close his eyes and listen. Not for danger, not for glory, but for the heartbeat of a world finally at peace. Because in the end, it wasn't the power of the Rinnegan that saved the world. It was the heart of the boy who bore it.